Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Bakes here, and thank you for joining me for today's random horror review. Today's movie is one where, honestly, I wasn't really planning on watching this one. I was just kind of going through my shelf, sort of in the mood for something else, but the title of this one caught my eye because I technically have seen this movie before, but when I pulled it out and looked at the cover and was trying to regather my thoughts on this movie, I could remember, very little of this one, like, barely anything at all. So I was like, you know what? Let's give it a rewatch, see what my thoughts are. So today's movie is from 2018 and it is called The Domestics. So getting into the plot for this movie before we get into my thoughts of it, as usual, this movie is set in this post-apocalyptic America, not too far in the future. I can't remember if they specifically say how long has gone by since the initial incident has happened, but post-apocalyptic America at least. What had happened was like all these planes carrying this black gas, dropping it over the American public and everyone living there and wiping out a big portion of the population. From memory, they don't really give you too much detail whether it was like a government thing or another country had done it. Like, it's very little background given there, but as I said, all you really need to know is majority of the population was wiped out by this plane or planes dropping this black cloud, mass, gas, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, now in this post-apocalyptic environment, it's kind of Mad Max-like in a way. There's all these gangs and groups of people who are just trying to gain territory and power and will take out people who cross them, and yeah, that's sort of pretty much how the world is being run. You're either in these gangs or you're domestics, who are the people who, are trying to live normal lives again, and, they're not out killing people and whatever. The main story that we pretty much have here is this husband and wife who are trying to travel to... Where are they trying to travel to? I think it's like Milwaukee or something, from cross country. Now there's added relationship drama going on between the two here. There's a lot going on with gangs and people that they meet along this journey, but it's pretty much them trying to get from A to B. And that's pretty much all we need to know about the plot for The Domestics. Let's get into my thoughts of it now. Now, firstly, I've been one to say that I'm not massive on apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic horror movies. They just aren't really my thing majority of the time. I'm pretty iffy on them. I think it mostly depends on what other subgenre it merges into. Most apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic horror movies are normally zombie or infection films, but you also have like alien ones like A Quiet Place, or in this case you have like this government cover up sort of. I'm guessing that's sort of what it is. It feels like, just from the sense of what I was saying in my introduction and plot description, it sort of feels like the own government, like sort of trying to start from fresh. I don't know, possibly like another country. It doesn't really explain, but either way, this is a good example of the types of post-apocalyptic movies that I'm usually wary of. Technically, like I said in the intro, I have seen this movie before, but after rewatching it, like 85% of this movie felt pretty new and fresh to me. The other 15%, I vaguely remembered, but this was pretty much like a fresh first time watch. And after watching it again this time, it was very clear to me why, most of this movie I had forgotten. And it's unfortunately because it feels very stale. There's not much going on here in this movie to make it stand out, or give it an edge over other movies like this one. The things that they do try to add to this film to make it more distinctive, to me, just falls flat. And the word that just kept coming to mind while watching this movie, there was so many parts of this movie that just felt corny and just felt very run by the numbers. And I'm just like, this is doing nothing to win me over or like it more than what I probably should. Firstly, being immersed in this world and getting a feel of it was kind of dumb to me. I don't think it specifically says how long has passed since, these planes flew over and, gassed and killed most of the population. But it's definitely not been generations of lives or whatever, because the couple that we're following talks about, life before the planes. So the world that is sort of being put out there, whether you're gathering it from visuals or dialogue, they try to make it out like so much time has gone by. And I'll use examples of it, but like I said, there definitely hasn't been, generations going through this. This is like a lifetime experience, if that makes sense. Again, I possibly may have missed something saying, how much time has passed by, but my rough guess, it definitely hasn't been more than 15 years at most. If I had to really put it in a bracket, I'd probably say 2 to 4 years, has passed since that initial planes dropping the gas and whatever. So really not that far, but I don't know, just all the visuals and things that characters say and everything, it almost feels like they're trying to make the world more lived in, and it like sort of throws you off. It's like, okay, they're trying to make it feel more immersive, but I'm sucked into it being this level of immersion. I'm not sure if that's really making sense, but it's sort of like really throwing me off. But my point is, like, the world is run, and the way people speak about it just seemed, again, like very corny. That's the word that I was using before. Like, there's a part where someone from one of the gangs follows our protagonist into the suburbs, because they're obviously trying to get away from where all the gangs are out in, like, the wilderness and rural areas and whatnot. And they follow them to the suburbs, and this one character says, "Ugh, the suburbs." It's like, what? Like, if I had to guess, like 4 years ago, you were living in the suburbs. Like, what? Like, if it almost feels like what's that show? It almost feels like Rick and Morty for some reason. Like, that's what I kept getting. I'm like, not that much time has got. Like, shut up. Like, it was pissing me off. I'm like, stop trying to, like, I can't even put into words. Like, just the dialogue and the way that it was trying to immerse you in the world was like really throwing me off here. Like, it was like really fucking distracting. Don't get me wrong, I do believe in a scenario where, most of the population has gone out, there would be a very high level of chaos and anarchy and things like that. But to the extent of how it's depicted here, it just feels a little bit ridiculous and over the top. And the hatred from these gangs, like I was saying, you've got this one girl who comes in and she's like, "Oh, the suburbs," and all they want is like violence and like to gain land and kill people. It's just like, it doesn't feel like that much time has gone by. Like, why has everyone just gone to this level of crazy so early? Like, as I said, maybe it has been 15 years. Maybe I was wrong with my estimate guess. Maybe it's been longer. But it just doesn't feel like that. So that's the problem when, these characters are trying to, or the story is trying to make you feel like, it's been such a long time, when it just doesn't feel like that. It just makes everything else feel corny. Why are these gangs so full of hatred and, wanting to kill people and take over so much land when not that much time has passed? Like, that was just something that really stuck out to me. Like, there's a radio DJ that we hear through checkpoints through this movie called Crazy Al, and he's like not a very serious character at all. He's like, "This is Crazy Al." It's like, you're in a post-apocalyptic world. Like, what is like just so much of this movie, I was just like, where is this making sense? And it just felt like it was trying to be serious, but to me it was just like a big ick while watching this movie. I should get into the gangs in this movie, because they probably are one of the more interesting aspects to this film, or at least one of the more discussionable. But even with that being said, for myself, the gangs were like kind of lacking. Each gang has a name, this emblem, territory where like each gang, sort of has taken over, but each group is trying to essentially gain the monopoly of America, just try and take up as much space as they can. The gangs are meant to have these things that are specific to them. For example, there's a group called the Gamblers, who we definitely experience the Gamblers the most in this movie. And they probably were my favorite gang, but, take that with a grain of salt, because even they weren't anything special. But their whole shtick is like they gamble on their victims' lives, as in if they see these two couple coming down the road in their car, they spin a wheel. Should we kill them? Should we abduct them? Or should we just let them be? And like they gamble on that, and they just gamble on everything. I know it sounds interesting, but it really isn't. There's another group called the Nailers, which honestly don't really have anything specific to them. I think it's because their leader has a helmet. I think that's him on the front with like a mohawk of nails, but otherwise, there's nothing too interesting or specific about them. And then there's a group called the Sheets, which I'm presuming this guy is a member of the Sheets. And I'm saying presuming because everything about them felt so wasted. One of the first bits of dialogue that you hear in this movie, it's that radio DJ I was talking about, Crazy Al. And one of the first things he says is, oh, the Sheets have taken over this area of America. Don't go there because you do not want to mess with the Sheets. And, our main character has got a map, marking where gangs have taken over, and he crosses out the Sheets. Like, the Sheets are built up to be like this crazy, dangerous gang. Like, no one wants to cross the Sheets. We barely see the Sheets in this movie. Like, I'm not even joking. If I remember correctly, again, I could have maybe missed something, but maybe a total of like 2-3 minutes of the Sheets in this movie. You barely see them, and they're built up to be so dangerous. But when you see so little of them and they don't affect the story, like, why are we meant to believe that they're dangerous, and why are you hyping them up so much when they're not in the movie? Like, hype up the gamblers, because as I said, 75% of, gangs showed in this movie are the gamblers. But I don't know, again, just all the gangs feel wasted. I'm not sure if I said this in my plot description, but the movie The Domestics, it's called that because if you're not a member of these gangs and you're trying to just live a normal, life and just carry out the way things were, you're known as a domestic, so hence the title. But the gangs are this attempt to build the world and give the world a little bit more character. But like I said, when 2 out of 3 major gangs are just not even explored, it just feels bland and wasted. And then when you get into these gangs, it's just corny and it just doesn't work. Like, as I said, majority of this film, we follow the gamblers. And then the lines of dialogue and things going on, like, as I said, the world just doesn't come across as being that far into post-apocalyptic territory. As I said, to me it feels like maybe 2 to 4 years, and then you've got these characters going, oh, yuck, the suburbs, I hate the suburbs. It's like, you were probably just living there 4 years ago. Even if you had a worse life and you weren't quite living in the suburbs, there are that many empty houses, just overtake one. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, there's just so much corny dialogue with these gangs and things going on where, like, they're spinning wheels and they're like, we want to take your life. It's like, not that much time has gone by, guys. Like it just didn't feel very grounded and realistic, and I think it was just trying to come across as cool and edgy, and it just wasn't working. Like, this movie was like really making me cringe at some points. Getting into what is possibly my least favorite thing about this movie, and you're probably thinking, what, even less than the gamblers and the gangs and everything like that, because I really let loose on them. But yes, my least favorite part of this movie was the relationship between our leads, but especially our female in this movie. Now, I should first say the actress did a good job. It was nothing about her performance that made her dislikable, but for myself in particular, her, like the character in this movie, was extremely annoying and like really hard to root for. So background that we learn very early on in this movie is the couple are a husband and wife, but just as the world went to shit, they were getting a divorce. So obviously, when you're getting a divorce, you're not really seeing eye to eye, you're not really connecting, but with this circumstance of the world going to shit, they were sort of forced together. He still loves her and doesn't want to split, but she, doesn't love him anymore, and she's a pain. Like, that's all I can really say. She is a pain in this movie. Now, we don't really get background on what has led them to split, but from what it sounds, just through the small little hints, she just fell out of love with him. And that happens. That is fine. But in this movie, particularly the first half of the movie, he does nothing but care, protect, provide, bend over backwards for her. Like, there is so much shit that goes on in this first half of the movie where he is just going above and beyond for her. She doesn't need to say, I love you. She doesn't need to say, I want to get back together. That's not what I was looking for. But throw the man a fucking bone. Like, the amount of shit that he does for her in this movie, and she just looks at him deadpan, resting bitch face, and just shows him nothing but, like, disrespect and disgust. It's just like, oh my god, like, she's just not likable in the first half of this movie. It was driving me crazy. Like, I was actually frustrated every time she came up on screen, and she's meant to come across as sympathetic and likable, you can tell, because of certain scenes where we're following her through things, and she's going through big stretches of dialogue explaining her feelings and stuff, and it's meant to be like, oh, okay, like, she's got things going on with her family and slight disconnections with him here. But as I said, the amount of shit that he does for her, it's just like, oh, like, the only thing I can think to say, throw the man a bone. Like I said, you don't need to get back together, but fucking cut him some slack. Like, he's going through the same shit you are. But essentially worse, because he's fucking throwing his body on top of yours to protect you. Like, she was so fucking annoying in the first half of this movie. Now, kind of going into spoilers, but not really. Eventually she does flip and switch and try to make things work with him, which, even though is better because she was a bitch before, as I said, I wasn't asking for them to get back together. I wasn't asking for them to fall in love again and make it work. I just wanted her to be more grateful. And the switch for her to become, favourable to him again, or, whatever it is, just doesn't feel fluid. It just sort of feels like that, and it just sort of comes out of nowhere. Now, I will say, after her annoying streak and making things work, she does become a more likeable character, so that's good, but as I said, it just, that switch doesn't come natural. It doesn't feel fluid. It just feels kind of out of nowhere, and it's hard to get behind because, as I said, every moment before that, she was a fucking pain. So, summing this movie up to my final thoughts, this is a very frustrating watch. Like, everything that it's trying to do in this movie is just sort of failing to work, at least in my eyes. It opens quite well, actually, with like a quick flash of the origins, the planes and the black gas raining down. I honestly thought that was a really cool intro, and I was like, okay, this movie has something going for it here. Filling you in on the domestics and the gangs and how shit is being run, you're like, okay, this sounds really cool. But when you actually get into it and everything that is sort of pitched to you within the first 10 minutes of this movie, it literally is all hype, no reward. Like, everything sounds really cool, but then once you get there, it just feels very lackluster. A lot of scenes and dialogue just come across as extremely corny, like I covered, very cringe throughout this movie. Even the main relationship is approached interestingly. The divided partnership going through something traumatic, that can work, and it sells as an interesting film. A good example of a movie like that, where the lead couple are split but have to get through something traumatic, the movie that came to mind for me was Vacancy. I think that movie does it very well, where the couple I think they are getting divorced in that movie, but they're forced to work together, and it feels more real. This one, like, it definitely doesn't help that one of the leads is like, oh my god, like, get out of my fucking face right now. She was such a bitch, like, through most of the movie. As I said, the actress, no problem with her, but she was so fucking annoying. And then, once that problem is resolved, it just sort of feels like it comes out of nowhere. Like I said, it didn't feel very fluid to the story and our characters. Honestly, this movie isn't terrible. Like, I know I've made it out to sound, like, atrocious. But, it's just one of those cases where there are, unfortunately, more negatives than positives, at least for me. I know there are people that do like this movie. I've heard it get brought up in conversations, and some people are like, yeah, no, it's pretty good. I'm just not a fan of this movie. Like I said, I can see why I forgot so much about this movie from watching it the first time compared to now. It's just because so much of it is really stale. There's just not a lot going for it that works and lands what they're trying to do. So giving this one a score out of 10, I'm going to give The Domestics from 2018 a 4 out of 10. Yeah, I think like the biggest thing that like could have made this movie work better, as I said, a bad lead, but like, if when the gangs got involved, they lived up to the hype, you'd be like, okay, like, as I said, you're promised, like, oh, the sheets are the most dangerous, you don't want to cross the sheets. You barely see them. Like, I forgot they were a gang, like, majority of this movie. The Nailers, they have, like, this really cool logo of, like, this big tough guy with, like, an axe over his shoulder. Fuck, I could take on the fucking Nailers, like, and I'm nothing. And then you've got the Gamblers, and you're like, okay, some, like, taboo, crazy, gnarly shit could go on here. Like, there's one part where they get taken to, like, the Gamblers' compound, and they're forced to play this game, and I'm like, here we go! It was over in like 2 minutes, and I'm just like, yeah, no, I don't care for this anymore. So, yeah, there is a lot there that can work. It just sort of fails the execution, at least in my eyes. But I don't know, if you've seen this movie, let me know your thoughts of The Domestics. I'm going to put this one back on the shelf, and I'm sure a lot of time will go past till I check it out again. But thank you for joining me for this random horror review, guys, and I'll see you for another episode soon. Peace.